Happy New Year, everyone. I hope it brings you luck. If not, at least it's brought you day 11 of the 12 days of Celtic mythology. It looks like we're on track to have 11 winners to the challenge. So well done, all of you. You're bankrupting me, but that's okay. I hope everyone else who's been watching is also enjoying it and learning a bit. I appreciate your company along the way. It's nice to see that quite a lot of people are watching this year. But we're not done yet. This isn't goodbye. If you're enjoying this series, why not take one of my online classes? There's almost always something on offer. Some classes have tiered pay what you can pricing, and there are usually a few scholarships available for the more expensive classes. To get notifications about classes and about scholarships when they're announced, you can go to my website and subscribe to my newsletter or follow me on my Patreon page. So when we left our story yesterday, Bran and most of the able-bodied men of Britain had journeyed to Ireland because of the wrong done to Bran's sister Branwen, who was married to the Irish king called Matholwch. Now that marriage had got off to a rough start when Branwen's half-brother Efnisien had attacked and mutilated the horses of Branwen's new husband. It had been impossible for Matholwch to prevent his people from using Branwen as a scapegoat for that awful deed. Now it's come to war, or at least a standoff between the two kings. When Matholwch saw the size of Bran's army, not to mention the size of the giant Bran himself, he once again tried to make peace, offering to pay for the insult to Branwen, just as Bran had formerly done when Matholwch had been insulted. However, this time, Bran, believing that he had the stronger hand, was not going to accept too low an offer. So that's where we join them, sending their messengers back and forth. When Bran wasn't placated by Matholwch's offer for peace, his men counseled him to offer something Bran wouldn't be expecting, something quite thoughtful and flattering, it would seem. Bran was so large that neither house nor castle could contain him, but the Irish decided to build an enormous tall house for him, a great feasting hall with space for Bran and his people on one side and for the Irish host on the other. And the intention was that this would be a house of peacemaking and that Matholwch would acknowledge Bran as his overlord. At least that's what they told Bran. And perhaps that's what they told Matholwch too. We don't know. Branwen encouraged Bran to accept this in the hope of making peace once and for all. So the house was built, a magnificent hall with 100 columns to support its roof. However, a trap was being laid. On each of the columns was a hook with a skin bag hanging from it. And inside each bag was a fully armed Irishman. Efnisien was the first to notice the bags when they were inspecting the house. He inquired about them and was told that they contained flour. Efnisien went to see for himself. He felt the first bag and he found the head of a man inside, and he crushed the head with his fingers until his fingers sank into the brain. Then he went from pillar to pillar until every bag contained a dead man. After that, everyone came into the house, each host on their own side, and no mention was made of the bags after that. Peace and friendship was renewed, and the sovereignty was given to the child Gwern, son of Branwen and Matholwch. Once the formalities were included, Bran called the child to him to greet him, and next the lad went to Manawyddan. Everyone could see how the child took to the kindly Manawyddan. Nishin was next to call the boy to him, and he went gladly from uncle to uncle. "Why doesn't Branwen's son come to me?" said Efnisien. "Even if he wasn't king of Ireland, I would show him affection." So Gwern went to Efnisien. "I confess to God," said Efnisien under his breath, "that I am about to commit an unspeakable crime against my kinsman." And suddenly he lifted the boy by the feet and thrust him headlong into the fire before anyone could stop him. When Branwen saw what was happening to her son, she rushed forward toward the fire, but Bendigeidfran prevented her, for it was already too late. By that time, his shield was in his hand as a terrible violence arose in the house. The two sides were attacking each other as if they'd been seized by madness. Then the Irish heated the cauldron of rebirth. They began putting their dead into it, and by the next day, these silent warriors began to fight again as the battle raged on. Everywhere there was slaughter, but for the men of the island of the mighty, there was no chance of being revived. When Evnissyen saw this, he thought to redeem himself for all the death and destruction his actions had caused. He hid himself among the Irish corpses awaiting the cauldron, and soon 2 half-naked Irish fighters threw him into the cauldron with the others. Inside the cauldron, Evnissyen pushed on its walls until it cracked and fell in 4 pieces. His heart burst with that effort, and he died. In the end, there was really no victory to speak of. Only 7 men survived of the whole host of the island of the mighty, not including Bendigeidfran, who was wounded in the foot with a poisoned spear. The 7 who survived included Pryderi, Rhiannon's son, and Manawydan, and Taliesin. The dying Bendigeidfran ordered them to cut off his head, saying, "Return to Britain with my head and bury it on the White Hill in London with my face toward France. Your travels will be long before you reach that place. For 7 years, you will feast in Harlech with the birds of Rhiannon singing to you. My head will be as good a companion to you as I was in life. Then go to the island of Gwales in Penfro. There you will feast for 80 years, and as long as you don't open the door facing Cornwall, my head will remain fresh and living. But when you open that door, you must leave and take my head to London." It's a strange ending to the story, except it isn't the end. Not quite. We'll hear about that tomorrow. Since Evnissyen has reappeared, I think it's time to talk about the mutilation of the horses. I know you've all been waiting for it. And to see if there's meaning in it. So in order to do that, I'll need to talk about the other parts of the Mabinogi. So I'm going to give you a quick PowerPoint. In the first branch, Puig, Prince of Dyfed, goes to Annwfyn and has a great adventure. When he returns home to his kingdom, he meets Rhiannon, an otherworldly woman riding a magical horse. At their wedding feast, Puig speaks carelessly and accidentally promises to give Rhiannon to Gwawl, her former suitor. Rhiannon takes charge of the situation, and through the clever use of her magic, she and Puig manage to get married, but they humiliate and threaten the suitor Gwawl in the process. Rhiannon's fate continues to be intrinsically connected to horses, so much so that we sometimes call her a horse goddess, and rightly so. When she gives birth to a son, he's stolen on the night of his birth, and Rhiannon is framed for killing him. Her punishment is to sit by a horse mounting block and offer to carry visitors to the castle on her back like a horse. Meanwhile, on the night of the child's birth, a man called Ternon is attending to his mare, who foals every May Eve, but whose foals always mysteriously disappear. This time, he sits up with the mare to try to prevent this. As soon as the foal's born, Ternon finds an infant boy in the doorway, and the mare and foal are safe. Ternon and his wife raise the boy, and when they realize he's Rhiannon's son, they return him to her, and she names him Pryderi. In the second branch, as you know, this is about Bran, his sister Branwen, and brother Manawydan, their 2 half-brothers, Nissyen and Evnissyen. The King of Ireland, Matholwch, arrives to ask for Branwen's hand, and soon there's a wedding. During the feasting, Evnissyen returns from a journey and seeing the Irish horses billeted nearby, asks whose they are. On hearing of Branwen's marriage, he flies into a rage and brutally mutilates all the Irish horses. After that, things are never the same, and finally a terrible battle between the Irish and British take place, which we've been hearing about today. There are very few survivors on either side. Bran is killed, although his severed head lives on for a time, as the British survivors visit an otherworldly island, and Branwen dies of a broken heart. Pryderi and Manawydan are among the few British warriors to survive, and in the third branch, they go together to Dyfed, where Manawydan marries the now widowed Rhiannon. Pryderi and his wife Cigfa become fast friends with Rhiannon and Manawydan, but soon the whole kingdom of Dyfed disappears in a mist, leaving only the four and an empty castle. No farms, no cattle or servants or warriors. They have to live by their wits for several years. One day, Pryderi and Manawydan are hunting a white boar. It eventually runs into a magical fortress, followed by Pryderi's hounds. Pryderi goes in looking for his dogs and becomes entrapped. When Rhiannon hears of this, she too disappears into the fortress and becomes its prisoner. Eventually, Manawydan saves the day and discovers that everything which has happened relates to Rhiannon's humiliated suitor from the first branch. In the fourth branch, we have yet another king and kingdom. This time it's Math, the king of Gwynedd, and he has two nephews called Gwydion and Gilvaethwy. Math must rest his feet in the lap of a virgin at all times, unless he is at war. His lap maiden is called Goewin, but Gilvaethwy wants her for himself. So Gwydion, who is also a skilled magician, starts a war with Pryderi through means of trickery, so that Math will be absent and Goewin unguarded. While Math is off fighting Pryderi, Gilvaethwy rapes Goewin. Meanwhile, there are heavy losses on both sides in the war, which Gwydion started and in which Gwydion kills Pryderi. Gwydion suggests his sister, Aranrhod, as Math's next virgin footholder. She's brought before Math, who throws his magic wand on the floor and asks her to step over it. When she does, a baby boy drops out of her, who quickly disappears and jumps into the sea. As Aranrhod is leaving the room in humiliation, a small something drops from beneath her dress. Gwydion takes it, and soon it has turned into another male child. Gwydion raises him, but Aranrhod wants nothing to do with the lad. She curses him, and he comes to be called Lle. Aranrhod's curse means that Lle can never have a mortal wife. So Math and Gwydion make a wife for him out of flowers and call her Blodeudd. She's soon unfaithful to him with a man called Gronw, and the lovers plot to kill Lle. Their plot isn't entirely successful. Lle is only wounded and eventually returns to kill Gronw. Gwydion turns Blodeudd into an owl as punishment. Lle eventually sits on the throne of Gwynedd, but it appears to be a hollow victory, as there's no prospect of an heir. And now, the horses. The lives of humans have always been intrinsically connected with horses. From the scenes on cave walls, like this one from Chauvet in France, to this etching of a horse from Creswell Crags in Derbyshire, you can sense some spiritual connection between these artists and the horses, who were often their prey. Moving forward in time again to 3500 BC, it's believed that the Botai people were the first to domesticate horses. They were a relic population of hunter-gatherers at a time when some of their neighbors would already have been farming, but the Botai transitioned directly from horse hunting to horse herding. They left some signs of ritual use of horse bones, like stallion skulls buried in pits near their houses. These decorated foot bones, some of you might recognize these as the first phalange or toe bone from a horse. This is a natural shape of this bone, and the artists took advantage of the way that that shape is reminiscent of a female body and accentuated it by incising a dress or a tunic on them. It's believed that these would have held some religious significance. They were kept in people's houses, perhaps as some kind of a charm or votive object. This seems to be among the first connections between woman and horse in what we might call early religion. Over time, as people practiced agriculture, they became more warlike and horses became more bound up with sovereignty. I'll link to a video which goes deeply into the sovereignty aspects of this at the end. If it really interests you, you might like to take my Celtic Horse Goddesses class, which happens every November. Not all female sovereignty figures in Celtic myth are necessarily goddesses, and not all sovereignty goddesses are connected to horses, but some of the most powerful are. Rhiannon is probably the most strongly linked to both horses and sovereignty of all. And there she is at the beginning of the first branch of the Mabinogi. She becomes the queen of Dyfed and seems to embody the sovereignty of Dyfed, conferring it on Manawydan when she later marries him as well. And so we come back around to our story of Efnisien. In the first branch, the insults to the sovereignty bringer, Rhiannon, are the result of Puich's foolishness. While painful for her, they only impact Rhiannon. Efnisien's actions, however, are cruel and show a deep disregard for the sovereign Earth Mother in the form of Matholwch's horses. It's no wonder that the destruction which follows is also on a different scale. The visceral and highly specific description of Efnisien's crime carries a deep sense of wrongdoing against nature and beauty. Perhaps this harkens back to a taboo from our earliest beliefs. The pain and terror inflicted on these horses is an immediate shock to anyone who hears the story. Perhaps we should look into this wound rather than turning away to focus on the romantic tragedy of Branwen. It's as if the second branch is saying to us, listen, I don't think you fully comprehend the importance of the lesson of the first branch. Let me show you again. Let me make it more vivid. Let me remind you that there are limits to how you treat sovereignty. Efnisien has overstepped those limits of both intention and severity. In the first branch, Rhiannon upbraids Puich for unfairly spurring his horse, a crime that shrinks in comparison to Efnisien's bloody rampage. It's no wonder that none of the characters in this story are able to fix things. Neither sweet Branwen with her tame starling, nor two kings alternating between war and placation, nor Efnisien's last-minute attempts at heroism can alter the outcome. Men, horses, kings, heirs, and kingdoms, the precious cauldron of rebirth, and the divine queen herself are all lost. I believe we see the effects of this in the subsequent two branches. While not violent, the characters in the third branch spend most of their time lost and powerless, almost as if still in shock from the destruction and loss of life at the end of the second branch. Some vibrant aspect of sovereignty's been taken away, and we won't see it again. We're left rudderless. In the fourth branch, it's Goewin, Math's virgin lap maiden, who is the sovereignty figure, literally providing a resting place for the king's feet like the earth. As soon as she's raped, another terrible war transpires in which the men of the north and the men of the south slaughter each other in vast numbers until the killing of Rhiannon's son, Pryderi, brings it to an end. The lesson seems to be repeated a third time. but horses are hardly spoken of in the Mabinogi once Evnissyan destroys them. With the rape of Goiwin, sovereignty itself is disfigured and insulted, and after that seems to withdraw. Neither Aranrod nor Blideyev are interested in the sovereignty project anymore. Math and his young male relatives are unable to manufacture sovereignty with their magic and intrigue. It's a worrying end. At this time in history, now our time, when those in power seem to have lost all sense of the sacredness of nature, but are leading us to destruction while they squabble over riches and insults. This is a story we need to revisit. So, my question today is this: do you agree with my interpretation of this aspect of the Mabinogi? Those of you who follow my work know it's kind of a big deal with me, but that doesn't mean I'm right. That doesn't mean other opinions aren't valid. So if you agree with me, you can say so, you can expand on it a bit, you can modify my ideas a bit in your comment, or you can tell me why you see things differently. Come back tomorrow. We're off to an otherworldly feast where things will be quite interesting and not quite so gruesome. Bye bye for now.